Hello, my name's Lizzie. I'm Anglican. In 4 months' time, I'm going to be moving into a convent ready to become a postulant. And this morning I was talking with a friend and she was asking, is this it now? Are you definitely going to become a nun for life? And I was explaining that it's actually done very gradually and in different stages. So here is a little video just trying to give a little outline of those different stages. I will hold your people in my heart. So becoming a nun or a sister or like monk or friar or brother or male equivalents, it's a long discernment process, and it is you trying to discern where God wants you, but it's also the community involved also discerning if they feel it's where God wants you, and if they can like picture you fitting in with their community, etc. And so yeah, it's done. The discernment is done over a number of years, because it's quite, well, it is very like extreme. Yeah, it's quite extreme stuff. Like the vows, especially if you're taking life vows, you can't just decide within a few months if you're definitely gonna make those vows for the rest of your life. And you might you might be right that you're called to religious life, but it might take a while to find the right community or order for you as well. So it's intentionally, I think, like quite a long discernment process. So that I guess different communities have different lengths of time that you spend in each stage, but from everything I've read over quite a few years, and like from friends I know that are sisters, and convents I've visited, there seems to be like the same basic stages. So I can just give like what I know of an outline of those different stages. So first of all, if you think that a certain community might be for you, or you think like religious life in general might be for you, then you'd first, I guess that first of all you'd just go and visit a convent, or and get to know the sisters, or stay as a guest in their guest house if they've got like guest staying over facilities. So that would be like the very first step, just get to know them, or get to know different communities and find the community that most resonates with you, or where you feel God sort of drawing you to. And then the kind of first formal stage after that would be to live alongside the sisters in that community. And that's a bit different from being a guest, because normally if you're a guest, you live in a place that's separate from where the actual sisters live. Like they might live in the main convent, and quite a few communities that I know, they've got like a guest house or something like in the grounds, but it's not, you're not like sleeping and eating in exactly the same area as all the other sisters, or at least not, you're not having all your meals with them. But yeah, you're sleeping in a completely different place is what I'm trying to say. um and you're not living their exact sort of 24 hours as they would be. So when you live alongside them, like you might be called an alongsider, that's when you're living more similar to the sisters than you would be if you were just a guest. And being living alongside is like a trying out to see if you do feel called to religious life, or if that community does feel right for you. But there's no kind of expectation that you'd necessarily sort of progress from that. From what I understand, it's just more like a trying out thing. But then if you do feel that God is calling you to religious life, and is calling you to that community, and if you do feel that, if you can see yourself in that community for life, like potentially, that's when you would ask to become a postulant. And if the community feels it's right that you become one, then they'd allow you to become a postulant. And it's basically them trying you out kind of more intentionally, a bit more formally, or with a view to the fact that you may well, this may well be the right place for you. So being a postulant would be a set period. For me, it would be 6 months, but other communities might have different lengths of postulancy. But you wouldn't become a postulant, or you wouldn't ask to become a postulant unless you really did feel that this could potentially be where God wants you for life. So it's different from being an alongside-er in that sense. And I explain this a bit more in my what is a postulant video, so I won't go into it too much. But the fact is that you could become a postulant and end up staying there for life. That's the kind of the thing that you're maybe like assuming, or being open to at least. So it's more than just a trying out. But that they are trying you out and you're trying them out. And when it gets to the end of whatever the number of months that is set for you being a postulant, if you still feel it's the right place for you, or where God wants you, and if the community, which is important, if they feel it's the right place for you too, that's when you become a novice. And during this time when you were a postulant, you were probably just wearing your own clothes. Whereas when you become a novice, people use the phrase like being clothed, because that's, I think, normally when you would suddenly, in this sort of little ceremony service, you would formally be given clothes that look much more like the sisters' clothes, like a habit or something very similar. If you've ever seen Sister Act, there's the young, like, auburn-haired sister, and she wears like a pinafore dress with a blouse, whereas the others are in full habits. And that's how in that community in the film, like, she's a novice, which is why she looks very similar to the sisters, but is like dressed slightly differently. Whereas other communities, that the novices wear exactly the same as the fully professed sisters. So when you're a novice, that's more like it's kind of like a first stage sister. I think there are life vows that you eventually make, but I think when you're a novice, I think quite often you might make temporary vows, or usually of something like poverty, celibacy, and obedience, but that you might only be making them for a period of like 2 years or 3 years or something, and that's for you to try out, I guess, like living out the vows to see if you feel that you can make those same vows but for life, if you decide to progress. And I think being a novice, it's a bit like being like a junior nun, or a bit like being a student nun. I'm pretty sure you're given things like placements or assignments or reflections to write. There's an element of studying, because you'll be studying like the rule of your particular order or community, and yeah, there's something a bit student and junior nun about it, and you'd be given like duties and things, and yeah, and so you'd be a novice for it might be like 2 years, it might be longer than that. I guess, yeah, every community is different, but I'd have thought it'd be at least 2 years, if not a lot longer. And when you get to the end of your few years of being a novice, if you and the community still feel it's right for you to progress to life vows, that's when you would make life vows. And yeah, but up until all this point, you can leave at any point you want to if you suddenly feel it's not for you. Like, I said in another video that apparently only about 1 in 4 postulants go on to becoming a novice, and then more recently I've heard that quite a few people, they become novices, but during their time as a novice, or when their temporary vows come to an end, they then leave because it wasn't either the right community for them, or they realised that religious life wasn't for them, or maybe just for a period of time religious life or that community was right, but it was sort of a stepping stone in God's plan for their life. So that's why I'm being encouraged to just to take like one step at a time, because you can never be like 100% sure what God's plans are, and yeah, you've got to go into it like very open to the fact that you might be making life vows in this very community that you're entering as a postulant, or it might be a stepping stone to something else. But even if you've made life vows, you can you can leave. You can, yeah, you can leave the community or leave the order. I suppose it would be like getting a divorce once you've made the vows of marriage. I guess it would be maybe like frowned upon, or not, obviously not encouraged to get that far and then realise that it wasn't for you or whatever. But basically, it's not like I'm going into something that I can't come out of if I feel it's not right or it's not where God wants me. It's deliberately a very gradual and long, yeah, discernment process, precisely because you don't want to be rushing into such like big decisions and big vows.